people that are still doing idol worship, and that are, we work with people that live in a leper colony, and so we do ministry there. We do ministry with a guy who is doing, working in the prevention of human trafficking, and it was really cool this last year. Show me the next slide real quick. There we go. Let me get to this first. So this is, I was preaching in a church one Sunday morning, and we get to do the church services at all the different churches there. And church is really different there. Here you guys are kind of sitting in these pews and everything. They sit on the floor. They have these Persian rugs laid out everywhere. The whole room is filled with Persian rugs, and they sit on the floor. So you're like down with your knees up in your chest, real tight. You can see the people, how tight they are in here. And it's all the way to the back wall like that. So actually, when I got up to speak this morning, I said, I'm not here to speak. I just couldn't stand sitting on the floor anymore, so I'm coming up here to say something. But actually, I was speaking. But the cool thing is, this place is so packed with people that they actually have the windows open, and people are sitting outside the same way. It's really awesome to see that Christianity is starting to grow in just amazing ways in Nepal, because you have a country that's so has such deeply entrenched in Hinduism and deeply entrenched in Buddhism for so many years. Actually, it does have Christian roots way even before that, way back when, but that's a whole other story. And it's great now to see Christianity starting to grow there. And because it's starting to grow, the Hindus in the government are getting very concerned about that, and especially now that it's now a secular government, it's no longer a Hindu government, and being a secular government, they're afraid that Christianity is just going to take off and grow, so they're bringing persecution to the Christians now. It's now illegal to share your faith. They're cracking down on the pastors in so many different ways. They're cracking down on our contacts that we work with there in Kathmandu and in Pokhara, so please be praying for them. And but we know and can rejoice in the fact that when persecution comes, Christianity grows. It has always been that way. I hate it, though. I hate it for my brothers over there. But it always grows. So continue to pray for wisdom for us and how to minister to them and how to keep our students safe, because I take groups of students every year. Give me the next one. Here's some of them. You could tell they don't have a lot of rhythm. Some of them are on the ground. Some of them are up in the air. Some of them have landed already. So they're just kind of all over the place. But this was part of our team last year. We had 28 students. Give me the next one. There we are, right there. And the Lord just did amazing things through so many of these students this past year. It was great seeing the growth in them. And I'll talk about one in particular. A girl came last summer, and we place a heavy emphasis on doing outreach in the countries we go to. So we'll go and we'll share the gospel pretty much like 5 hours a day. So we're doing outreach. But we also spend about 5 hours a day in discipleship and growing them and training them and nurturing them to come back here and grow in their faith, because not many of us have been discipled, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. So I had this one girl, Perry, who was on the trip last year, blonde-haired girl in the back row, and she's, we were talking, doing the discipleship stuff and training in them and how to do it when you go home, and she was like, Hank, I've only been a Christian less than a year. How can I go do this? And I said, you can do it, man. The Lord will show you. I'll come alongside of you. I'll be with you. And just, we've got social media now. You can text me. You can ask me all kinds of questions. I was speaking at a church the other night, a couple Wednesdays ago, actually. And I get this text in the middle of it. She says, I'm getting ready to meet with this girl right now that she's been meeting with all fall. Since she came home, she started meeting with this girl. And she said, I'm meeting with this girl, and she's been through the same things I've been with in life, the same struggles I've had. Exactly, she's had, and she's not a Christian. So how do I do that with a non-Christian? And I've been able to show her and teach her and walk her through it. And it was really cool as I was getting up to speak the other night to hear that she's doing it and still doing it. And we continue, my wife and I both, to make ourselves available to the team throughout the year so that we can keep helping them grow as we turn them back to their youth pastors and into their churches. As a matter of fact, we did a Christmas party week before Christmas at our house in North Carolina, and 15 of the 28 students from all over the country came to our house. So we had so many from California, from Oregon, from Texas, from all these different places. They came to our house. It was just amazing. It was a fun time. Let me see the next picture. This is a shop in Kathmandu. And you could just kind of see all these gods that were just made. And when you see these things that were carved out of wood, or they're made in a molten metal, and they were just made earlier in the week. And these people are going down and laying $10 or so. They're using rupees, but they're laying it down, and they're going home and they're worshiping this thing as it's a living, breathing God. They're praying to it. They're seeking answers from it. They're guiding their life by this piece of metal that they bought for, 10,000 rupees or whatever. And it just really breaks my heart to see that. But we have a tendency to worship things in a different manner here in the United States and make other things idols, don't we? Next picture. This is the monkey temple. Actually, you can't see it too well, but there's a little monkey sitting down the bottom there. And we take the students to the monkey temple the first day, and then we take them to, which is the Buddhist temple. You can see the Buddhist eyes there. And then the next day we take them to Pashupati, which is the Hindu temple. And then the third day we take them to church. And the students just kind of see where these religions have gone and where they are. And it's depressing when you go to these places. It's a marketplace. It's a carnival type of thing. It kind of sounds discouraging that, how could a carnival be discouraging? But it really is. They just turn it into this marketplace and trying to make money off the religion and all this stuff. And the students all walk away going, this is terrible. And then we take them to the church and they sit with the believers there who are alive. And I mean, they are on fire and ready. And they're like, what a difference to see these people who are looking at you with hatred and just there want you to spend money on them. And then we go to this place where they just want to worship with us. And so it really sets off our trip well to share the gospel throughout the summer. Let me see the next slide. There's my wife, Jackie, in the forefront here with her back to you, and my friend Delaney. This is where we're doing ministry into the leper colony. And there's a woman, if you do, get one of my brochures out at the door. If you have a student that's interested in going overseas and wants to do a missions trip, please feel free to take a brochure and just take a look at it, go to our website and pray about it. But if you get one on the Nepal page, if I can find it, there's a picture of that girl, Perry, who is discipling the girl in California, and a woman named Gungatha is in there. And Gungatha this was the day in the leper colony. So as Jackie's talking to this woman here, I'm at the other house on the other side talking to Gungatha. And as I'm sharing with Gungatha, we're just getting all the information. And I saw her, I walked up, I was like, you're kind of the mayor here, aren't you? You're in charge. And she was like, yes, I am. And I was like, you're the one I want to talk to. And so we just ended up having this great conversation, find out she's a believer. And then as we're talking, I told her, I said, is there anything I can pray for you as I go home this year? And I took a picture so I remember to pray for her. I keep it in my office. I wish I would have had it on the computer and put it on here. And she said, what would you think? What would you think she would say? Put yourself in her shoes. You're in a leper colony. You've got this disease. It's ravaging your body. What would you say that you want me to pray for? She turns to me and she says, I have 2 daughters that don't know Jesus. Will you pray for them this year that they come to know Jesus? I said, yes, I will. And I'm going to tell everybody that I speak to pray for Gungatha's daughters. So please do that. Take a brochure and pray for them that they come to know Christ. She gets it. She understands what life is all about. It's not just her physical ailments. Life is about knowing Christ and walking with Christ, and she wants that for her daughters. Let me see next slide. This is just kind of cool. We walk around, we see elephants, we ride on elephants while we're there, and there's a story that goes with this elephant. I'll share it in a second. Go ahead and move on. And it starts with this one, okay? Because while we were there, because you're a missionary, you got to tell a funny story. It's something stupid that happened, right? So we get to Chitwan, which is where this is, and I had been to Pokhara, I had been to Kathmandu before, so I knew the locations, I knew what was going on there, but in Chitwan, I had never been there before. So the guy at the hotel says, Hank, do you want a guide to show you around Chitwan so you can see it? And I was like, yes, I'd like to know where the grocery store is. I'd like to know where this is. I'd like to know all this stuff. And so we took the whole team on a tour to show them, where we go and where we can go and all this different stuff. And then he takes us out through the houses and we go into this elephant nursery where there's like baby elephants and stuff. Yeah, the girls always love this. Yeah, it's like Dumbo, And so they go out into this elephant nursery, and it's really cool. We see the elephants. We see all this stuff. And then he takes us back through the elephant nursery out the back gate. And something should have hit me when I saw that the back gate looked like a gate in Jurassic Park. I'm not kidding you. Big electrodes, all kinds of stuff on it. And I was like, and I turned to the guy and I go, are we supposed to be here? We're just kind of walking out. There's high grass and there's trees and all this stuff. And he's like, oh, and this is what he does, because this is what the Nepali men do. He goes, oh, yes, it's okay. And I'm like, what'd you just do with your head? Is that a yes or a no? I'm not sure what I'm reading here. And he says, yes, it's fine. I said, okay. So we come out, and we don't walk far into it, and then all of a sudden he stops, and he goes, stop, look. And about 60 yards away is a big black bull rhino. And I'm like, oh my goodness, it's not even on a leash or anything, you know? I'm like, we're in a jungle, this is crazy. And I said, we're not supposed to be here. And he said, oh yes, it's good, come this way. And so we come around the other side, and just on a little patch of trees between the rhino, there's another gray bull rhino. And I'm like, oh my goodness, man, we're not supposed to be here. And he's like, yes. So we come around, that's when we saw those elephants, and we're just like walking, and the elephants are walking past us. They're like the size of this room. And I'm just like, wow. At this point, I'm starting to go, I'm nervous because I've got my team of 28, and we're not supposed to be there. And we will never, ever, ever go there again, parents, I promise you. That's not going to happen again. That was an accident. But as we're sitting there, I'm going, oh my goodness, I got this team here and all this stuff. But inside, I'm going, this is awesome. This is the coolest thing I've ever done. I'm digging this so much. I hope none of the kids get trampled. And so we come around from those elephants, and we just kind of stop. And then there's this patch of grass, and the Nepali guy, because they're like 4'4", walks into the grass, and he's gone. And I'm like, I'm tall in Nepal, which is amazing, and he's just gone. And I'm like, we're here by ourselves. And about 20 seconds later, he comes running through the grass with his arms flailing, and he's going, run, the rhinos are fighting, run. And I'm like, oh, and I just turn around. The whole team is in a line behind me. I said, run. And everybody's like, what? And they just start running. I get to the end of the line, and my wife, Jackie, I love her so much. I really, really do most of the time. She's standing there, and she goes, I ain't running. She says, I got flip-flops on. I got white pants on. I ain't running through the jungle. You brought us out in the jungle. This is your fault. And I said, woman, move your butt. And I grabbed her by the shoulders and just took her through this dry creek bed, and we ran up on the other side, and the rhinos didn't come through the grass. So what did she tell me? See, I told you so. I didn't have to run. We exit the jungle, and I'm just like, great, we're out of there. And we come up on this little baby rhino. That's a baby rhino, okay, as tall as me. And we weren't too far from it, but we come up, and we're seeing it, and my team's behind me, and these guys on the other side of the fence there just start throwing rocks at it and stuff. All the girls get, they threw a rock at the rhino, can't feel the rock, okay? No. But it was agitating it, right? And so I was like, I don't know if this is good. The second I thought that, he turned and charged us. Not the guys who were throwing the rocks at, he charged us. So what was my reaction? I just went like this. I put my arms around my wife and my team, and I just sat there, and I was going to stare it down like it was a poodle, And I was like, don't ever turn your back on a dog. That's the first thing that came to my mind. Don't turn your back on. This is a rhino, right? And then all of a sudden, like half a second into that, I went, I'm about to die. This was stupid. And it stopped. It only took like 4 steps, praise God. But it was enough to scare me to death and go, oh my goodness. And here I just had this total feeling of being lost. It's like I was in the right place. I was in the places I was supposed to be, but yet I was lost. And I think we can feel that way a lot of times, can't we? Don't we really kind of go through that a lot of times as believers? Let me see the next picture. So after it, I said, let's take a selfie, This is Pokhara. This is where we go. It's just amazing views of the mountains of the Annapurnas. Next picture. Fishtail, that's off of our hotel. Next picture. And Annapurna. And I think there's one more, right? Oh, yeah. That's me and Jackie out on an elephant ride, and we got thrown in the water, so it was a lot of fun. It was a blast, so had a good time. So I enjoyed watching her get wet after yelling at me for making her run. So it's like, you got wet. So anyway, but it's wonderful. It's amazing. We love the ministry we're doing. As I shared, we do outreach, but we're all about discipleship. We're all about raising the next generation of believers. And I think we're all in that together, aren't we, right? We all know that the children are our future, right? Teach them well and let them lead the way. Actually, that's a terrible song. The song kind of goes south from there into the depths and the bowels of secular humanism, doesn't it? But it's true that our children are our future, aren't they? The future of our church. And so, man, join us, guys, in reaching the future generation of the church. Invest in your students here. Give them your excellence. Don't just give them your leftovers, because they're the future of this church. They're the future of the church and the kingdom of God in the world. And so we're passionate about training them and training them well to come home and to serve back here where they are. And thank you guys so much for supporting us and for enabling us to go do this ministry. And if anybody's thinking, man, I thought I'd like to support missions. I don't know, it's kind of been on my mind. You know, we need monthly supporters, so please come see me afterwards about that. But also, if you know somebody who's like, yeah, I know somebody who's a high school, college-age student, or even above, teachers that have summers free, that want to go, please come talk to me about that. At the back table, I have the brochures, and I also have a piece of paper there for you to put email address or mailing address, and you'll get our prayer updates to pray for us as we're doing ministry. So please do that. But right now I want to share with you what the Lord's laid on my heart to come and speak to you guys this morning. And it's found in Acts chapter 8. So I almost said 5, but Acts chapter 8. And so if you have your Bibles, please open there. As many of you guys know, I grew up here in Ocean County, lived in Bricktown, Toms River, and then eventually Lacey. Went kind of right down the coast. And when I grew up, I had my best friend Robert in Toms River. And we just remained close, still are to this day, as a matter of fact. And Robert was kind of a guy that I looked up to at the time. He would teach me, he would grow me, he would just kind of like a mentor in my life. And he also was a guy that was really into working out. You know, he was a big guy. Robert, bald head, big ears, short, you know, it was kind of funny, but he was just this big guy, right? And so he would help train me. And so this one day we're out doing this workout, and he's training me through this. He's trying to show me, he's always trying to teach me life principles through these workouts and stuff. And this day we're moving around, we're moving rocks. We're doing like farmer carries with all these rocks. Now stuff that a lot of us do in CrossFit and F3 workouts we were doing back then because we fell in love with the movie Rocky IV, right? Rocky was doing the logs and doing the stones and all this stuff. And so we were really into that. And so we're doing this workout. We get done, we're tired, and we go pick up our friend Artie. Artie was an exchange student. His name was Artie Didu. And Artie just couldn't speak English. He just didn't know English. He just kind of made noises, but we kind of knew what he was saying when he said it, you know. He was kind of a funny guy. We really liked him, and we decided we just wanted to go out. So what we would do a lot, and I'm going to preface this by saying this happened before I was a believer. So when somebody tells you this happened before they were a believer, it usually means this was something stupid I did, okay? And so what Robert did, somehow he got a copy of his girlfriend's key to her car. And when she was working at Roy Rogers, we would kind of take the copy of the key that Robert made and go ride in her car. And yeah, stupid, right? You know, this is what dumb high school guys do. Parents, beware. Your kid's doing this stuff. Okay, and so we go out for a ride, and it's January, right? We got Artie and Robert and me, and we're taking out this car. It's a 1978 Monarch. Yeah, some of you remember those cars. The rest of us are like, praise God, we don't have those anymore. So we're out riding. It's January. We're in Lacey. And as we're riding down these dirt roads and stuff, I just thought, I had the brilliant idea of going, I want to see what this thing will do on the ice. Yeah. Now, just recently on this whole speaking tour I've been doing the last 3 weeks, I was up in Maine, and I did some ice fishing with a youth pastor buddy of mine. We took the truck out on the ice. That's Maine. This is New Jersey, right? Temperatures change daily around here, right? So we're out riding around. I get on the ice. I'm doing figure eights. I'm doing donuts, doing all kinds of stuff, and just abusing this car. And everything was going really good until I heard kaboom, crash, and I'm looking up at the sky because the back half of the car fell down in the ice and the front wheels are sticking out. And I'm looking up at the sky and going, this is stupid. And I'm like, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? And Robert, always trying to be the teacher, he's like, no, you can get this car out. You can move this car. And I'm like, Robert, this is stupid. Moving rocks is one thing, but I can't pull this car out of the water. And he's like, oh yeah, you can. He's like, you're always so certain you can't do things. And I'm like, and he tells me, you don't listen. And I'm like, Robert, this is not a teaching moment. This is a problem. And he just kind of kept harping on me. He says, the only difference on this is in your mind. He's trying to teach me lessons. He's trying to teach me lessons. And I'm like, all right, I'll give it a try, right? And so I go over and I start getting the car and it starts moving. And it's coming out. And I'm like, this is so cool. And Artie's just like, he's making all these stupid noises because he can't speak. And he's making all these noises. And I'm like getting excited about it. And then all of a sudden, I couldn't get it all the way and just dropped it back down in the water. And I'm like, man, I can't do it. And then Robert turns to me and he wants me to give it another shot. And I say, all right, I'll give it a try. And he says, no, try not. Do or do not. I was like, okay. So I give it another shot, right? And Artie's going nuts, right? I can't do it. And then Robert does this amazing thing. He comes over to the edge of the bank. He reaches out his hand at the car that's in the water, and he picks it up and brings it over to dry land and drops it on the dry land. Artie's going nuts. He's just like, drops it on dry land. And I'm just like amazed. I'm like, oh my goodness, I don't believe it. And he's like, that's the problem. You don't believe. That wasn't my life, was it? All right, that was Luke Skywalker and Yoda in Star Wars, wasn't it? Right? And some of you are going, oh, wait, what? What just happened? Yes, that was a scene from Star Wars where Luke was being trained by Yoda to be this great Jedi master, right? Do you remember it? So anyway, I think she's going to wet herself. Somebody better get her help. So anyway, Luke is struggling in his training from his Jedi master, right? And he just can't seem to get it straight. He just can't seem to get it right. And Yoda's like, tell him, you can do this. You need more faith. You can do this stuff. And in the meantime, Luke drops this ship. The Star Wars people get mad at me when I call it a ship. I don't know what it's called. But he drops the ship into the water. And then he can't get it out of the water. And then Yoda has to do it for him, right? And here, I think we see this again, just like I was talking about with the rhinoceros. We see this scene where Luke is in the right place. He's under his master who's teaching him, who's growing him, who's developing him. He's in the right place, but he still seems lost most of the time, doesn't he? He still seems like he just can't get it right. And he just keeps trying. And honestly, guys, I see this a lot of times in the church. I see this in us as believers. I saw it in me for years, and I still have my moments of seeing it in me, if I'm honest. In that, when I first became a believer, I didn't know what I did. And I was trying to figure it out, and I was just kind of lost. What do I do next? I don't get this. I don't understand this. But I never asked anybody. Luke had asked Yoda. And Yoda was training him, and he was struggling. And sometimes we just kind of struggle in the spiritual walk, and we kind of struggle in trying to get it right and getting along the way, and then sometimes we just kind of fail and stay there by side. And that's what happens here in Acts chapter 8, and that's why I want to look at this real quick, okay? So let's take a look at this. Here's what's going on. This really actually is the second part of a message that I did last year here. If you remember last year, I spoke on Matthew 28, the Great Commission, right? Jesus says, go therefore into all the world and make disciples, right? Go and make disciples. And so let's kind of go back to that, right? What's happened, right? Jesus came, he died on the cross. You know, everyone thought like, man, this Jesus guy, man, we're going to follow him forever. I'm going to die with you, Jesus. And they don't, right? And then Jesus dies, and they're like, oh man, what just happened? And, you know, when he dies, it's just this amazing event happens because there's this great earthquake. The sun comes down out of the sky in the middle of the day. The curtain gets torn in the temple in half. Dead bodies are coming out of the grave and rising around like the first recorded zombies, and there's never been any others, okay? They're not true. But God brought these people out of the grave, and they're walking around, you know, and you're like seeing your uncle, you know? And just things are topsy-turvy. The world's in chaos. We think the world's in chaos today, and it is because of sin. But man, this was chaos. This was nuts what was going on. And so they see all this stuff, and then Jesus is buried, right? And then like 3 days later, he comes back and he's walking around. And for 40 days, they see him here and they see him there, and they hear all these things about Jesus, and he's everywhere. And then he like gets the guys up on a mountain, and he tells them the Great Commission. And he says, you know, go in the world and make disciples. He's basically what he did was he summed his whole ministry up into one phrase, go. Go and make disciples. And that's what us missionaries love to say, because we love to say, this says to go, this says to go, this says to go. And it's true, it does. But it also says to make disciples. What is that? What is it to make? So do we make disciples overseas? Yes, we do. We train people to do that. But we do that right here too.
We do that as we go. And actually the word in there says as you're going. So we make disciples here where we're at. And we're going to talk about that in a minute, because a disciple basically is when we take somebody under our wing and we teach them things. We let them ask us questions. We show them things. We disciple them and we teach them. We do it more or less on a one-on-one basis. I think a lot of times in the church we've reduced discipleship just down to Bible studies or small groups. And those things are wonderful. They're part of discipleship. Don't get me wrong. I do those every week. It's my discipleship ministry, God's discipleship ministry lets me be a part of in North Carolina. We have 14 groups that meet every week. And half of those groups are small groups like that, where it's several people looking at. But I tell the people in the small groups, hey, do you want to go deeper? Do you want to be able to just be one-on-one and do discipleship stuff? And we meet one-on-one, and they ask me questions, and we do different teachings, and we do different things, and I hold them accountable, they hold me accountable, and we just run through all this stuff that's amazing and takes them to a deeper level so that they can then go and do it with others. That's what we like to do with our students during the summer, because that's what we're supposed to do in the church. That's what Jesus culminated his ministry in telling them to do. So he tells them to do that, and what do? Do they go? No, they stay. They're like, okay, we kind of like Jerusalem. Well, this will be my ministry right here. That go thing that he said, that's our other people. Other people are called to do that, not me. I'm supposed to stay, right? That's for other people. And so they stay, right? And then what happens? Persecution comes, right? Romans start just minimal persecution at this time. Especially Paul was one of the ones there when they stoned Stephen, right? Stephen was stoned, and then they scattered. They just went everywhere. So basically, here's kind of how the scene sets up: is Jerusalem's here, and the guys are up here in Samaria. I got it backwards. I do this every time. Samaria. It was right from my side. In Samaria, and they're up there doing ministry because they scattered because Stephen got stoned, and they were afraid that it was going to happen to them, so they went. And then they started sharing the gospel up there, and guess what? People started coming to Christ left and right. And they're up there for a while, and they're like, all right, let's go home now. So, and I can relate to this because I get to the end of my trips. I'm gone for 10 weeks during the summer. And when I get done at the end in August, after 10 weeks of being gone and sharing and ministering and working, we literally work 18 hours a day with no days off. I'm spent. I'm done. I want to come home. And you know what God does every time? Because I'm coming home, I'm going to do nothing for a little while. I'm just going to sit around, watch ESPN, sit in the air conditioning. That's what I'm going to do now. And God brings something for me to do every time. He's like, no, you don't rest. You don't stop. You rest, but you don't stop. And so he brings something by all the time for me to keep going in. As a matter of fact, this past year when we came back, my wife and I, we stayed in Boston. And when we came back for a couple of days, and when we were there, I couldn't sleep, so I went out to get Jackie some coffee, and I went to this Dunkin' Donuts, and I got the coffee, and I was talking to the lady back there. I felt the Lord just going, have a conversation. Have a conversation. You teach the students all summer, never meet a stranger, so you can open up the door for a gospel conversation. So here's your chance. And I'm like, okay, I'm tired. I don't want to do this. So I did. Nothing happened. I left. I went. Next day I came back in, and her face lights up the second I come in the door. And I'm like, I ain't that special. I don't know what she's all excited about. But she goes, you've been to Nepal. And I was like, do I smell like it? What's going on? I had a Nepal shirt on, right? And I forgot. Right? A shirt said Nepal on. She's like, I'm from Kathmandu. And I said, oh, we were just in Kathmandu all summer. And so we just had this great conversation. I'm thinking, okay, Lord, doors are going to open here. Nothing. She had some customers. I had to leave. I said, oh, I'll see you tomorrow. And she said, I won't be here tomorrow, but there'll be some other ladies here from Kathmandu. Okay, cool. So I came in the next day, and it's like our last day there. And me being a smart aleck, right? I got money in one pocket, American money, but I got rupees in the other pocket, Nepali rupees. So I'm going to try and pay with my coffee with the rupees, right? So she gives me the price. I hand her the rupees, and I just see her face like bewildered. And in the 20 words of Nepalese that I know, I could tell that she said, he's trying to give me Nepalese money. And so her friends come out and everything, and we talk and we laugh and have a great conversation. Well, I got done, and at the end of that, I went to say goodbye, and I still had 2 Nepalese words used up that I hadn't used in my holster yet, in my pocket. And one of them is namaste. People will say that as a greeting and as a goodbye. And I hate the word namaste with everything I own because I know what it means. People say it all the time. They put it on their pillows. It says, on your pillow you engrave namaste in bed, you know. And namaste means I bow to the God inside of you. We don't know that. You know, it's like a hippy-dippy thing to say namaste. You know, that's cool, man. But that's what it means. I bow to the God inside of you, and I can't stand saying it because I know and I understand the one true God, Yahweh, and I believe in him and bow to him only. And so I did not want to say this. I was like, I had to say it a couple times this summer. I don't like saying it. I vomit in my mouth every time I say it. And so I said Jamasi, which is the Christian greeting in Nepali. And the lady jumps out from behind the counter. Her mouth opens wide, and I'm like, oh my goodness, what did I do? And she says, I am a follower of Christ. Thank you so much for saying that. I just wanted to talk to a believer. I don't know any believers in Nepal. I don't know any believers in Boston. I just wanted to talk to a believer. So sometimes God will give you the opportunity to say something or to do something, and you may be too tired and don't want to do it, but do it. Because amazing doors open. I didn't get to share the gospel at that time. It's okay. It was great conversation that we had with each other and shared. So let's get into the passage now that I keep rambling on. Verse 25. And so when they had solemnly testified and spoken the word of the Lord, they started back to Jerusalem, just like we were saying, preaching the gospels to many villages to the Samaritans. But an angel of the Lord spoke to Philip, saying, arise, go south to the road that descends from Jerusalem to Gaza. Okay, so again, they're leaving Jerusalem. They're heading down. Philip's, I can only imagine he wants to go home, but the Spirit says, go down to the road that leads to Gaza. So the road that comes out of Jerusalem down to Gaza is over here. And so he goes down to do this ministry with this guy that's traveling to Gaza. Verse 27, and he arose and went, and behold, there was an Ethiopian eunuch, a court official of Candace, queen of the Ethiopians, who was in charge of all of her treasure. And he had come to Jerusalem to worship. And he was returning and sitting in his chariot. Okay, so here's basically what's going on. This guy's like a high-ranking official. He's in charge of the queen's money. He's a big dude. He's pretty important. But he's from Ethiopia. Now, he's on the road to Gaza. Now, the road to Gaza is not too long, but from Gaza down to Ethiopia, let's just say from Jerusalem to Ethiopia is 2,500 miles. He's on a long journey, right? It's not just a short trip to Gaza. He's going down to Ethiopia, but the Spirit sent Philip down to catch him as he was leaving out of Jerusalem. And what does it say he was doing in Jerusalem? He's worshiping. Think about that for a second. 2,500 miles to go worship. This guy must be committed, right? Because there's some people who aren't here this morning who couldn't get up at the crack of 10, right, to make the 1.5 mile journey to church in a car because it was too cold, right? Or whatever, okay? Now, don't laugh at those people because that was you last week, wasn't it, right? Okay, let's be honest. We've all done that at times, right? We've found excuses to get out of these things. This guy must be committed. He's going 2,500 miles. And then we see a little more about him because more starts to get revealed here. Honestly, we do see that he's a eunuch, and we know what that is because of Pirates of the Caribbean, so we can just kind of go on from there. And it says that he was returning and sitting in his chariot and reading the prophet Isaiah, verse 28, right? Reading the prophet Isaiah. So this guy is not only going all this distance to worship, this commitment, this love of worship, we love to worship in our churches today, right? We love to impress people sometimes with our worship sometimes. But we love worship, and worship is good. What we see, he's reading the Bible. He's reading the Bible outside of church. This guy must be committed. He's reading the Bible outside of church. He's worshiping, all this stuff. And how many of us are reading the Bible outside of church? I got to ask you that. That's the biggest question I ask my students all the time. Students that I had from 10, 15 years ago, students that I discipled that are now in their 30s and 40s. I'll ask them, how are your quiet times going? You spending time in the Word of God every day? Because that's the most important part of our growth. Church is important. Bible study is important. All these things are important. But spending time in the Word of God every day will help us grow and help us understand what we believe and why we believe it. And enable us to go and do things like Philip is doing here that we just can't understand sometimes when we're not doing that. And so we see that he's reading. So he's committed, and he's reading Isaiah. Why is Isaiah so important? Prophecy, right? There's a lot of prophecy in the book of Isaiah. And so prophecy shows us about Christ, written years before he came on the earth. These, not in the Old Testament, there's 348 some odd prophecies that we kind of dabble around, but really the 120 serious prophecies that we have of Jesus, that he fulfilled every one of them, that only showed that he had to be the Messiah. It proved who he was. And so these prophecies are so important. And again, we're in the middle of this time and age where all these crazy things are happening, centered around Christ and Jerusalem and all this stuff. And this guy has just left there, so he's reading this stuff. And the Spirit says to Philip, verse 29, join his chariot. And when Philip had run up, he ran up, right? Me, I get home at the end of the summer, I'm just like, I ain't running nowhere, you know? Philip ran up. He was excited. He wanted to go have this conversation with the guy. He hears him reading Isaiah the prophet and says, do you understand what you're reading? I love to do this. I'll run into people reading the Bible in the airport, or I'll run into people reading the Bible anywhere around the world in different places. I love to ask them, what are you reading? Do you understand what you're reading? What do you, and all this, and just have great conversations with people. So he asks him this, and the guy says, how could I, unless someone guides me? And he invited Philip to come up and sit with him. So here we see this guy, it's like, he must be committed. He's worshiping, he's reading the Bible, but he doesn't know. He doesn't know, and I think a lot of times we could be, and I heard a preacher put this way, it made the most sense, that we can be a person going in the wrong direction with an interest in Christian things. You know, again, going back to my thing of, we can be right where we're supposed to be and still be lost. He was in the right places. He was worshiping. He was reading the Word of God. He was doing all the right things, but still didn't know. Still didn't understand it at all, and needed somebody to come alongside of him, somebody to disciple him, somebody for him to ask questions of. And I love that he asks for help. How many of us are in that situation or have been in that situation in life and are afraid to ask for help because we don't want to act like we don't know what we're talking about? We don't want to be embarrassed because, somebody will think I don't know, or this or that. But he did. He asked. He wanted help. And he asked Philip to do this. And then we go on in the next two verses. We see that he was reading basically Isaiah 53 is what he was reading. Prophecies about Jesus. And we see that he's reading this. And he's asking questions. He's getting taught by Philip. And in verse 34, and the eunuch answered Philip and said, please tell me, of whom does the prophet say this, of himself or of someone else? And Philip opened his mouth and began with the scripture. He preached Jesus to him. Okay, this is basically 1 Corinthians chapter 1 and chapter 2, right? Preach Christ and him crucified. Don't worry about all the other stuff. Don't worry about all this thing. I was walking around the other day when it was like negative 90 here. I don't know what it was, the wind or whatever. I decided to go out for a walk. I had nowhere to speak that morning. And I went into the antique shop over here. And there were some ladies in there. I ended up starting a conversation with them over a CD I was buying, ironically. And she just asked what I did, and I told her what I did. And she said, and she had all kinds of questions. We started talking and just had a gospel conversation. But one of the ladies just kind of wanted to go on the side trails all the time. Wanted to talk about things with the Crusades and things with this and things with that. And I'd kind of give an answer and try and get it back to Christ. Try and get the conversation back to, I wasn't going to ignore her feelings. I wasn't going to ignore what she was bringing up. I wanted to give legitimacy to that. But I wanted to get the conversation back to Christ every time. And that's what we're supposed to do, is get the conversation back to Christ and keep the conversation on Christ. And that's what Philip does here. And, and here's what happens, too, in this. We kind of see this relationship. Now, Philip didn't have chance to do long-term discipleship with him. He kind of did it as you would in a missions situation, and came alongside of him and put his arm around him. And is that happening in your life? Do you have somebody in your life that has taken you under their wing at one time or another and said, let me show you? Or somebody that you've asked. Now, I remember in my life, a lot of you guys have heard my testimony and heard this part before, but I'm going to say it again anyway. I wasn't getting it. And a guy that I was playing ball with at the time, I was in my early 20s, we had a game, got done, and we were in a parking lot afterwards. He just kind of turned to me and said, you don't get this, do you? The Christian stuff. And I said, what do you mean? I kind of thought I did. I kind of was rolling along with it, but I really didn't know what to do. And then he told me. And then I asked him, could we get together and look at this stuff? And he discipled me. And he taught me and then showed me how to go and disciple others. That's what discipleship is. Have you asked somebody to come alongside of you? Have they come and asked you? Because we need that. That's important. That's what Jesus summed his ministry up in, do discipleship. Are we doing it? So who's discipled you? And if nobody has, who would that person be that you want to disciple you? I'm sure you know somebody that you go, man, they got that figured out. I want to be like that. I want to get this right. I want that lifestyle to rub off on me. Go be with them. Go let them disciple you. And then if you have done that and you've grown and you're at this place, who are you discipling now? God's brought people into your life. That's your mission field. Disciple them. Teach them, train them, and send them out to go and to reach others, because that's our ministry. But sometimes I think that we kind of stop shy of this. Maybe we don't know about it. This never occurred to me. That's a lot of people, honestly. It was me for years. But I think also sometimes we're afraid to grow. I don't want to grow because if I do, I have to find ways to justify my own mediocrity that I've decided I want to live in and just live in stagnation. And so if I do, I got to find ways to justify those things. So if I stay in ignorance, I don't have to. Or maybe we think also if I grow, I might be asked to grow more by God. And I don't want God making me into some freak, some religious Christian freak. But guys, let me tell you this, because I think this also goes with the next thing that I have down, is that I might also be asked beyond to grow more, but to do something, to give back, to serve. And I think we're afraid of these things because they might take something from us. But you were designed and created for this in the very beginning. Sin came and broke that. And Jesus brings us restoration to come back to that. And you find out that when you start doing these things, and ask anybody in here that's been discipled or anybody in here that's been growing in their faith, they will tell you that as you start to get more and you start to understand more and you start to learn more about the things of God and you start to serve more and give it away, you find out, I was made for this and I want more of it. This is like that person, maybe it's your wife or husband right now where you're going, yeah, man, when we first started dating, I wanted to be with them all the time. Maybe now, not so much, But we wanted to be with them. Or maybe it was that relationship that was from years ago that you thought, this is the relationship, and I want to be with them more and more and more and more, and I want to be with them, and I just want to get to know them and all this stuff, and then we found out that it was a bad relationship, right? But in the very beginning, we had that desire to want and to grow. And we get that with human beings, right? But human beings always let us down eventually. God does not. And so when we grow in that relationship, we find that, man, we want more and more, and it's good, and it's awesome, and I was created for this. And who doesn't want to live in the very way that they were created and designed to walk in? And so I challenge you to do that. Or maybe I'll have to go tell somebody. Oh, that scares me to death, right? Because I told somebody I told my Aunt Clara, and she still won't send me a Christmas card, right? It went bad. It went south. I'm no Billy Graham. I can't do that stuff. We saw Billy Graham in the promo for the video there. I don't know if you caught that, but the young preacher and the thing was a young Billy Graham. And I saw the first movie of that. I think a lot of us did, Unbroken, right? That's the second part of it that wasn't really told in the first movie. So I want to see it too. But I'm no Billy Graham. I can't do this. Do you know how many people Billy Graham shared the gospel to? 215 million people. In presence, not counting television, because it was streamed on television all over the world. He shared to 215 million people came to hear Billy Graham share the gospel. And you know how many came to Christ? 3.2 million. 3.2 million, that's like amazing, that's awesome, that's a lot of people. I couldn't do that. I can't share the gospel with 3.2 million. But you know what 3.2 million is? That's 1.5% of 215 million. Billy Graham only had a 1.5% success rate of the people that he shared the gospel to like that. Why are you afraid of Aunt Clara? Why are you afraid of that one bad situation that happened? Because Billy Graham was rejected by 98.5% of the people. Didn't come to Christ, and he kept going and he kept doing it till 3.2 million came to Christ. Have you shared to 100 yet? Don't stop doing it. Don't be afraid of the roadblocks, because you've got the answers that the world needs. And they don't have the truth. Don't be afraid of their answers and their questions and what they want to say to you. It's okay. You just keep sharing the truth and just keep loving them till we see people come to Christ. If I grow, I might have to measure myself up to God's standard, right? Because then I'll know it. If I just choose not to know it, I could be a mediocrity all I want. But if I start to know it, then I kind of got to measure myself up to this, don't I? And I like to measure myself up to my own version of the truth that I've made, of who I've made God to be. And what I measure is my standard, because I can do okay with that one. So sometimes we like to do that. Or maybe we choose to just be able to measure ourselves to the person sitting in the pew next to us. Ladies, don't look at your husbands, please, right now. Because I can always find somebody in a room that I'm better than, right? Don't we do that? We measure ourselves up to that person. We can find somebody in the room. What about the last guy in the room? How does he feel? I don't know. But even that last person in the room, and usually I would find in a room that there's 10 to 20 people who are going, I'm the last person in the room. I'm that way. I don't have this figured out. I don't know this. But God doesn't view you that way. God views you only through his son, Jesus. And he sees you as either a believer or not a believer. So maybe you're the person who's not a believer. Maybe you're the person who goes, I've heard this. I understand that, yes, Jesus came. God himself came in human form to die for my sin. Because I had this sin condition, this sin problem that was cast upon me years ago, and it's evident through the sin that I commit, and that I've got this sin problem, and God can't be with sin. And I need that fixed, but I can't fix it myself because God's requirement for that is the shedding of blood, and perfect blood at that. Why is God's requirement blood? I don't know, but sin took away life, and life comes through blood. And life taken reapplies that, okay? That's why I think he does it. We're not sure. But I do know this, that it has to be a perfect sacrifice, and we're not capable of that because we have sin. So Jesus had to come to be that sacrifice for me and die on the cross in my place to restore me back to God the way I was initially created to be. And he applies that forgiveness to us if we repent of our sin and accept him by faith, because we can't pay him or do anything for that. We can't pay him back for the life of Jesus. So we have to just take it as a gift. Maybe you haven't done that. Maybe today's the day you can do that and be changed and be new and enter into a relationship with God, and then start this growth process that we're talking about, and then find somebody to take you under their wing and to teach you and to show you and to grow you and to nurture you and to develop you in all these things. So where are you in this journey? Has it ever occurred in your life? Or are you wondering, what is discipleship and how can I do it? No matter what you have, you could come up here and ask questions afterwards. One of the pastors will be up here. If you're not sure which one's a pastor, just find a bald guy and he'll point. And they're probably one of the pastors, or they'll point you in the right direction. I know that for sure. Okay? Am I right or am I right? Okay? Thank you very much. Okay? Or me. Okay? I'm not there yet. But, or come see me. And we'd love to tell you how to enter into that relationship, or how to find somebody to disciple you. Are you finding that person to disciple you, to grow you, to nurture you, to bring you along? Because you were created for that, and Jesus summed that up in ministry. Or are you just kind of going, and I'll ask the band to come up now, or are you just kind of going, I just do my church thing, and that's what I'm supposed to do, right? Show me the verse that says that in the Bible. Show me the verse that says that God is not an everyday God in our life. Please teach me. I'm asking you. Because surely you've based that decision off of some facts, right? Or did you just come to your own conclusion and make your own theology about that? That's dangerous. Find out what God says. Find out what his standard is and grow in that. Ian Anderson wrote way back in 1970, and came out on an album in 1971, that God is not a God you have to wind up on Sundays. To this day, Ian's still not a believer. How did he write that and understand that and never become a believer? I don't know. But it's the truth. God is not just a God that you wind up on Sundays. He's a part of our everyday. It's a relationship with him. And I want to encourage you to get into that relationship and grow in that relationship. And if you have not, please come seek that, because it's what you're made for, and it's the one thing you better get right before you leave this world. And once you receive it, take it and grow in it, so you can not only become smarter, but give it away. Thank you.
Just get to the last one.